Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this Masters of Horror Season 1 episode review video as part of my current February 2024 series, where I'm taking a look at all 13 episodes of the first season of Masters of Horror from the mid 2000s that I have here, of course, on DVD. The first thing I'll mention is you might see the title of this episode that I'm reviewing being the first one in my series and say, well, wait a minute, that's not the first one that aired. I'm actually going by the order in which they are on the DVD. So the first one on disc one is Cigarette Burns, and I realized in researching this, it's actually the eighth episode that aired in season one on Showtime. We're going to be out of order if you're kind of going off of how they aired back in 2005, 2006. I'm just going by pulling out disc one and playing the episodes as they are. So just wanted to throw that little disclaimer out there in case any of you are wondering, so why are you starting with Cigarette Burns? That was in the middle of the first season. So that's why. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this review for Cigarette Burns. So first of all, Masters of Horror is an anthology television series created by director Mick Garris for the Showtime cable network. So that's where this series originally aired back in 2005. This is episode number 8 from season 1, as I mentioned, directed by John Carpenter and written by Drew McWeeny and Rebecca Swan. So, getting into the episode itself, Cigarette Burns is the 8th episode of the first season of Masters of Horror. It originally aired in North America on December 16th, 2005. So basically, the premise is deeply in debt to his dead wife's father, rare films dealer Kirby Sweetman, played by Norman Reedus, has less than a month to produce $200,000 to save his small theater. An old cinephile, Mr. Bellinger, hires him to find the sole print of a rare 30-year-old film titled La Fin Absolue du Monde. Basically, the absolute end of the world is what it translates to. The film supposedly sparked a homicidal riot during its premiere, after which it was destroyed. So it created this riot where people were killing other people in the theater as well as themselves. So basically, this guy, Kirby Sweetman, I think it's Sweetman. Kirby Sweetman is trying to track down this film that exists out there for this Mr. Bellinger, who's played by Udo Kier, by the way. So he can watch it for whatever reason. We're not really sure at first. And then the film kind of goes from there. So the cast is Udo Kier, Christopher Redmond, Norman Reedus, and Gwyneth Walsh. That's the main cast for this episode. So that's kind of the setup, the premise, and the cast for Cigarette Burns, episode 8 from season 1 of Masters of Horror from 2005. I love this episode. As somebody that's a big fan of anthological horror series, obviously with my Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side, all those things, even Night Gallery. This was the first episode I watched, so I don't really have anything to compare it to in this series, but I just absolutely love this episode for a number of reasons. Let's just go into my pros. First of all, I love the premise and the idea that this episode has. I always do like those sort of premises where there's a movie inside a movie, if you will, where many of our characters or people within the movie are going to some sort of film festival or there's some sort of movie. And I know a lot of these movies exist out there. I haven't seen them all. Demons comes to mind right away from 1985, but basically this movie inside the movie, which causes the viewers that watch it to put them in some kind of peril throughout the movie. The horror coming from the movie reels or the movie screen, as it were. Like I said, like Demons from 1985 comes to mind, but there's plenty of other examples. But I just love that whole idea, that whole premise. It really works well for me. So right away they got me in the premise of the story and really engaged me. I thought this was a really well-directed and executed show by Carpenter in terms of the mystery and the suspense, the build-up surrounding this movie that's out there that they're looking for, that's been missing for so long. It really is quite engaging for any viewer of this episode because you have to find out what's on this movie. You have to find out what caused all these people to go crazy. Just that whole buildup of suspense, that he does it really well in this episode. John Carpenter does. So that was something that really caught my attention from a positive standpoint. There's some really good, cool gore in this movie, including one character pulls out his intestines and runs it through a movie projector. So there's lots of blood and gore, especially towards the end of this movie. So, which is kind of rare for even like series that air on Showtime and HBO. You don't tend to get that amount of gore that you get in a non-rated horror movie, or even an R-rated movie to a certain extent, and especially a Carpenter movie. I mean, typically his movies, well, there's some gore in them. He's not known for being a gore hound, but in this episode, there's a lot of gore. Like I said, from intestines to character gouging out their own eyes, to a shot, or not a shotgun, but a gun blast to the head at somebody's mouth. So for you gorehounds out there, I would definitely recommend this episode from that standpoint, even though it does have a lot more going forward as well. The performances I thought were good in this episode, especially by Udo Kier, who really steals the whole episode here with his character. Just the way his character is written, as well as the performance that Udo Kier gives. Not really a surprise. I mean, he's one of the great horror movie antagonists, I guess, if you want to say. He always plays such creepy characters in a lot of horror movies and does it very well. And he's really good here in this. I keep wanting to say movie, in this episode, in this series. So yeah, he really stood out to me. But everybody was fine. They delivered. I even thought Norman Reedus. I know there's been some up and down comments about him in this episode. He obviously went on to do The Walking Dead, which he's really good in. But I thought he was fine. I mean, I thought he held it together well enough. It has this episode has some really creepy imagery with the cigarette burn hallucinations, as well as some of what we see on screen from the film at the end. Now, they don't show you the whole film, of course. They don't even show you that much of this film. But that's not really the point. You see enough of it to know that it's got a lot of disturbing imagery on it, having to do with an angel and wings being cut off and things of that nature. I also forgot, for the Gorehounds, there's also a beheading in this movie, which kind of lasts a few seconds. So just throwing that out there. So it really does have quite a bit as far as kills and gore goes. But yeah, the hallucination scenes as well, where that's really where they show the cigarette burn in the screen, in your screen when you're watching the movie. It's not so much, they take the cigarette burns off this film, because typically in the old days, that was where they were changing out one reel for another. And that's how that was a mark for the projectionist to know when to do that. And so anyway, they use it for more of an hallucinating standpoint for the characters in this. And I thought it was very effective. I really did. And then, the character would black out after the cigarette burn, and then obviously some bad things would have happened in between there. So I thought that was really effective imagery. I enjoyed how the movie introduces us to all these people that were involved in some way to this film that's out there, and what their reactions are to being asked about it, and what their lives have become as a result of it. Like, there's a critic at one point, kind of early to midway through the movie, where we see he's just obsessed with writing this. He's got all these papers and this review everywhere for this particular movie from 30 years ago. The movie's been missing for 30 years, basically. I don't know if it mentioned that in the premise, but yeah, just kind of how it introduces all these different characters that came in contact with the film or had some connection to it, I thought was very effective. And it's part of that build-up that Carpenter does so well in this episode. So, yeah. All those things really worked well for me in Cigarette Burns, episode 8 from season 1 of Masters of Horror. As far as cons go, I really don't have any, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, maybe the ending could have been a bit more. Well, I don't think it's a terrible ending. It does just kind of end where you're like, okay. And it doesn't really have that gotcha or that sort of horrific outset. Which I understand wasn't really the point when you consider the themes in this movie and stuff. But I don't know. It just kind of left maybe it kind of left me wanting maybe a bit more. Although I don't know really what that would have been. Like I said, I was struggling to come up with any cons because I really love this episode. It's probably one of the great horror anthological episodes in any of the series that I have, to be honest with you. or that I've reviewed before. So yeah, that's Cigarette Burns from Masters of Horror Season 1. It's going to be hard for another episode. I'm hoping the other episodes are as good as this one, but I do know this is kind of a well-known, famous episode as well. In fact, I think it has its own releasing on, what do you call it? Something Films, 88 Films, I think it is. So it has an individual release as well. So I know it's a pretty well-known, popular one. So, but it's going to be hard for another episode to beat this one. I really enjoyed it. And I'm going to give this, from an episodic standpoint, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this at least a 9 out of 10. And I'm probably could even give it 9.5, considering I had a hard time coming up with cons. But I'm going to go with a 9 out of 10 for Cigarette Burns. I really enjoyed it. Everything from the atmosphere to the performances to the gore to the direction. I thought it really worked. And the fact that these episodes are all about an hour or so, or actually a little bit under an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and I think that's effective too, because you don't have a lot of filler and stuff. It just kind of gets right to it, and it gets down to business, so I really appreciate that. So 9 out of 10 for Cigarette Burns from Season 1 of Masters of Horror. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen this episode, what you think of it. Do you like it as much as I do? Not as much? Why not? Please comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming upcoming videos for this series, as well as my horror content overall going forward for the rest of the year. A lot of great stuff out there coming up. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you enjoy this overall series. I'm looking forward to watching the other 12 episodes, of course. But for now, stay scared. Bye.